Well, on January 23rd, 2021, this man will have the biggest fight of his career when he rematches Conor McGregor in the main event of UFC 257. It is the one and only Dustin Poirier. Dustin, I know you are in Florida. Why don't you give us an update? And first of all, thank you for your time. And give us an update on training camp. How's it going?
It's going good, man. I've been here 2.5 weeks now. UFC was filming today and yesterday. So just been busy. Normal training camp stuff, man. In and out of the gym a couple times a day.
Uh, how do you manage COVID, right? So even today, just before we started recording this interview, Leon Edwards out of his fight with Chimaev, two main events in a row canceled because of it. Like, what do you? I don't even know what you could do without significant financial resources.
I'm doing what I'm doing what I'm told to do. I'm wearing masks anytime I'm around people. At the gym, it's the American Top Team is shut down to the public still. We temperature check everybody who comes in, and my group of training partners are pretty much the same guys these last 2 weeks. I'm not really bringing in a whole lot of people at this moment. I have some solid guys who I'm working with and trying to keep them in the stable, and that's about it. Just doing what I can, loading up on vitamin C, loading up on vitamin D, and following the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you could do. When you're in Florida, do you live
If
alone?
I'm not at the grocery store or at the gym, I'm in my condo, and that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you live alone in Florida?
I have a condo here. I usually do 2 weeks out here by myself, and then my wife and daughter meet me for the rest of camp. And we're at that point now. They're coming to meet me this week. So yeah, but me and my family have live alone here.
Yeah, again, it's a crazy situation. So when you do your training, how much of it is in the ATT facility?
I would say 85-90% of it.
Okay.
The other small percent would be at a strength and conditioning facility or at my boxing coach's personal gym. But sometimes me and my boxing coach will meet at American Top Team. So most of the bulk of my work is being done at American Top Team.
All right, well, let's talk about this. A sort of a weird, undulating process. Uh, let's sort of set the scene here. Did you ever think that you'd get a chance? Did you want to rematch Conor? Like, to what extent did you envision things ending up the way that they are so far ending up?
It was always a fight that I was kind of not so much pushing off, but it wasn't in my crosshairs because I was still chasing the world title. And just the situation of the lightweight division, it makes sense now. I was always trying to fight the guy who was ranked ahead of me or whoever had the belt. But now, having fought Khabib already and having fought the guy who's ranked above me, Justin Gaethje, what else is there ahead of me really right now at this moment? In a division that's top heavy, Conor saying he wants to come back around and he wants to get back to the title. I'm the only guy in the top five coming off of a win, I believe. So it just made sense. It's kind of I guess circumstances of the lightweight division.
So when they came to you with well, I guess you guys had. I mean, how did it work? Because we saw you two sort of positively interact on Twitter. Did that spark something with UFC, or were there talks predating that?
No, that sparked it, man. It was me and Conor talking on Twitter. I was waiting around, training back home in Louisiana, kind of waiting to hear what's next. I had just come off the win over Dan Hooker, and we were waiting on the title fight to see how Justin did against Khabib. And I didn't know what was going to be next, honestly.
How do you, in your mind, view the significance of this fight? Because on the one hand, if you put too much into it, it becomes something more than it's supposed to be. On the other hand, it's not an ordinary fight. Even because we'll get to the belt in just a second. There may be a belt on the line by the point the fight comes around. We'll see. So there's so much on this. How do you sort of thread the needle between too much and too little?
That's exactly the mindset I've kind of kept going into this camp. It is a huge fight, a big opportunity. One of the biggest names in combat sports. A win over him at any point of your career is huge. But at the same time, it's just another fight. I've made this walk so many times. I've prepared for the best guys in the world over and over again. I think this is my sixth or seventh 5-round fight in a row, and just kind of taking that into camp with me and just staying positive and doing what I do. Just work hard, try to get better, focus on me, and not focus on the noise that's coming in from outside.
It was interesting. The first time you guys fought, it was really acrimonious and kind of ugly. I don't know what Conor's going to do, but what are you expecting from him? Not in the cage. We'll talk about that in just a second. But outside, he seems to be a little bit like he's a dad now. He seems to be a little bit more mellowed out, or maybe not. How do you read it?
I don't. I'm not reading that much into it, honestly. I mean, at the end of the day, January 23rd, we're gonna try to hurt each other, and talking nice or talking. And also at this point in my career, I don't really care about that stuff. I'm not a young kid anymore who's reading the headlines and caring what critics are saying, or go and check Twitter to see if Conor said something that day. When I was young, I would do that, and I don't really. It's just noise now.
Still, he is, as you well know. I mean, he got Jose Aldo out of his game a little bit. Even I underestimated how much he would how much his pre-fight antics would affect his competitors. I think Eddie sort of bit off more than he can chew in that regard. If he does decide to play games, like what is the solution to it? Because RDA tried to be like, oh, I'm not going to pay attention. He got eaten alive for as long as that lasted. How do you combat that if that is something he ends up doing?
Keep working. Keep focusing on what I can control. Like I said, all that's noise. I at the beginning of camps now, I draw a circle on a piece of paper and write the date of the fight in the middle, and everything I have control over, I write inside of that circle. Everything that I don't have control over, I write outside of that circle. And the stuff you're saying right now is outside of that circle. I have no control. It doesn't matter to me. I have control over my dedication, my mindset, my weight, my training schedule, my effort in the training sessions, my focus on improvement. I have so much to worry about already and control that stuff, I can't. And that's a good thing. Like you said, some of the best fighters in history have done that, have used mental warfare. Mike Tyson being one, Conor McGregor. I mean, the list goes on, right? But that's something that I guess you might have to go through. For me, I had to go through it to realize how much I was caught up in it. I didn't feel like the first fight, I didn't feel like I was fighting Conor. I felt like I was fighting the UFC. I felt like I was fighting the media, the fans, the critics, the people in the stands. I felt like it was me against the world when I walked into the octagon the first time. And it's not that. Of course, the pressure's still on me to keep the victories going, to keep the streak alive, to fight for the belt again. All that stuff's always weighing on me. But at this point in my career, man, I'm just happy and comfortable with who I am, and that's it. I don't want a lighter load. I want a stronger back at this point in my career.
So I went back and I watched the first fight for as long as it lasted. It was not especially long. I'm assuming you've gone back and taken a look at it, and probably more times than once. When you evaluate what went wrong on that evening, either from a technical standpoint or from a broader perspective, how do you attribute the result? How do you explain the result that night?
I got hit with a good shot. I got put down with a good shot, and if I'm being honest, we all know those early rounds, he's a handful. His left hand is very powerful. His timing is very good. He's accurate. His judge of distance is really good. He does a lot of things very well. And I fought his fight. I was like kind of what we just talked about. I was in the headlights. I was like a deer in the headlights in front of him. And, this time out, I'm going to fight my fight.
Is there any discernible difference between him at 145 and 55? I mean, obviously he's bigger and, that kind of a thing. But for you, when you went from 45 to 55, which is right after that fight, I believe, I think you had a submission win in your first fight after that over the Brazilian guy. I forget his name now. He trains over at Fortis MMA. But
knockout.
Who was it over? Was it I forget his name. It's the Brazilian guy, though, right?
Yeah, Diego
Ferreira. That's right. Diego Ferreira. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Who I believe is another top 10 guy now, So.
Yeah, that win has aged nicely, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But you also had this sort of like coming of age moment, and I could see your skill set getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner to the point where now it's sort of really firing on all cylinders. What about him? What has he done in your mind? Obviously, he's had great success, but I mean, in terms of his technical progression.
The Nate Diaz fights, or the bulk of footage I guess we have, because It's not like he goes out there and fights that often, and it's not like his fights are that long when he does. Those are the big clips of footage that we have. I thought he made some good adjustments between the two fights, and that's it. I mean, he's got to be improving. He's a martial artist. He's always working, I'm sure, and he's got to be improving. That's why I feel like this fight is a completely different fight. As you said, I'm completely different, and I expect the same from him.
Is there any way to explain the amount of growth you believe you've achieved in those 12 fights? Because I think you've gone 10-2 since then. How would you explain the differences between that guy that day and then this guy this day?
Skill-wise, I was probably a better fighter than I was showing in the fights that I've lost and won back then. I was just such an emotional fighter that kind of blinded me, and got in the way a lot of times. But of course, I've been in the gym, honing my skills, working on my craft. I'm very dedicated, man. This is my main thing. This is what I do. Whether I'm here in Florida, whether I'm back in Louisiana, I'm always working, trying to sharpen things up. The game's constantly, mixed martial arts is constantly evolving, and I'm trying to stay on that wave. I'm trying to evolve and grow with the sport and stay a contender and be a world champion.
In the media, it's sort of my job to think about the future all the time. Like, what will it mean if X happens, or what will it mean if Y happens? And, no one really knows, but we're sort of paid to do that for whatever that is worth. How much do you think about, again, I know you said you can only control what you can control, fair enough, but just as a human being, do you ever find yourself thinking about what it would mean if you won, or what it would mean if you didn't? How much do you wrestle with that for not merely this fight, but I guess fights in general?
Yeah, always, right? As soon as I sign a contract, I start thinking of what happens if I lose? Where am I at in my career? What's next? What happens if I win? Am I where I think I should be? And the outcome, I'm not really focused on that. I'm more focused on the performance. We'll see what happens after that. But with a win, I'm the number one. If this isn't a title fight, with a win, I'm fighting for the belt next.
Yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't be. So let's sort of get into that here just a little bit if we can. Again, we don't really know what's going to happen with Khabib. I guess he's meeting with Dana before your fight, so there could be some clarity that is resolved. If they decide for whatever reason that Khabib's going to stay and compete, which God only knows what's going to happen at this point, but let's say that that's what actually does happen, should there be an interim belt for your fight? Do you want an interim belt?
Unless Khabib is taking a lot of time away from the sport, I don't think an interim belt should be introduced. There's already been 2 in the lightweight division. Khabib's unified both times that their interim champ was introduced. No, there's been 3. Tony was the interim champ as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the division needs clarity and needs a undisputed world champion. And there's no reason for that unless Khabib is out for a long time. If he's retired, then two guys have to fight. The next 2 guys in line need to fight for the belt. If he's not retired, it has to be in the next 5-6 months, right? The guy can't take a year off between fights.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate, if this was for an interim belt, whatever the value of the belt in terms of it's signifying a champion or not, if you had it, you would have more money going into any kind of unification bout, right? So isn't there something to be said for more money?
Yeah, when you have Dana says it all the time, and what he says is true. The belt changes everything. Contracts are different. Sponsorships are different. All the whole business side of fighting is different when you have gold around your waist. Whether it's a real belt, an interim belt, things change. So, of course, with an interim belt in place, going into a title unification, there would be more money involved.
But that's not enough for you to suggest that there would be an interim title, that you would prefer an interim title. That, as enticing as that is, it's still not your preferred outcome.
Of course, I love what I do, but I have a family to feed. If there's an opportunity to make more money, I will make more money. I'll take that, of course. It's the same fight for more money, right?
Right.
But I want to be the undisputed world champion. If the next step is the interim belt again, then we'll go that route. But I just want to know what's going on with Khabib, and the division needs clarity, and it's needed it for a long time.
I want to come back to Khabib in a second, but I feel like, Dustin, this is an opportunity to reflect on the totality of your career to date. It's such an interesting fight, and it's such a time to look back on what you've done. So let me ask you a question, sort of broadly speaking. Looking back on your UFC experience, is there one fight, is there one outcome that you look at as being the one you're most proud of?
There's so many, highs of looking back in my career. Beating Max Holloway in Atlanta for the interim championship while he was a current featherweight champion was huge to me. It was a very big night I'll never forget. But I've had so many performances where, like the Gaethje fight, where after those I just lay down in bed before my flight the next morning, and I'm just thankful, because I remember being a kid before I started getting into big fights, and it just fighting on the local scene and laying down at night and thinking, after watching a fight card or watching guys like Dan Henderson and Shogun leave it all out there and saying, man, I want to be involved in fights like this. And it just feels good for me, as a combat athlete, to lay down after fights like that, especially fights like that where I'm the victor. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity. And it takes me and my opponent to bring that out of me. Same thing with the Dan Hooker fight. It's like a drug. When you fight like that, that high lasts for days. And I'm just thankful, to be able to go through that and show my medal, I guess you can say. I'm thankful for those opportunities to be tested.
Now, I don't mean to emphasize it because, I couldn't. There's just not many of them. Your wins are significantly more important than your losses, but you do have some losses. Is there one that was particularly painful? I guess it's besides the Conor one, maybe.
They all hurt, man. They all hurt. Falling short against Khabib, getting beat that way after preparing for so long for that exact same thing, and him still doing it. It's impressive. And then seeing him do it to Justin Gaethje, it's impressive. The guy is good. The guy is good. The Michael Johnson fight was a tough one for me.
That's can I interject? That is your weirdest loss. That's your weirdest loss. Like, I'll watch that one and it just makes no sense to me. Like the Conor one I can sort of get. The Khabib, as you mentioned, he's a special athlete. Johnson's a good fighter, but I've never been able to make heads or tails of how that went so badly.
You throw 4-ounce gloves around. You jump in throwing combinations with reckless abandonment for your body and your positioning and your balance and your weight, and you pay. It can happen to anybody. Do I think I'm the better fighter? Yeah, I do. But in mixed martial arts, any combat sport, it's the theater of the unknown out there under those lights. Anything could happen on any night, and it did.
Getting back to Khabib, what's so interesting is in trying to understand how a fight may go. Like, we're preparing all for the Gaethje fight. I'll go and watch Khabib's, I'll watch Gaethje's other fights, and how he did in particular scenarios. And then people go up against him, and it just has no relevance. Like, usually if I look at footage on a guy, I can get a sense of how things may, or sort of a rough roadmap of how it goes. And then they fight Khabib, and it's a completely different experience. What was your takeaway from that Gaethje fight, in Khabib's performance there?
Man, I bet Khabib to win straight up, and I bet Khabib to win by submission. So I doubled down on that one. That's my answer. I thought he was going to win.
Still, but getting chewed up on the feet, but then once he made contact with Justin, it was a completely different ball game. Did that not, I don't know if surprise you is the word, but certainly must have impressed you.
Of course. I was more surprised of Justin's jiu-jitsu and positional awareness on the ground. The lack of, but I don't have a whole lot of room to talk. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, competing for a long time, and I got beat up there too. But the armbar, the triangle, the things that the quick mounts that Khabib did, I think Justin was out of his game. It looked like after the first round he was tired. Certain guys, they can't adjust their styles that much. Justin is the wrecking ball, right? Not so much the matador. I think Tony made Justin look a little bit better than he is, honestly.
I see. Um, Getting back to your career, I know you're, and you should be, very pleased with how things have gone to date. Take pride in it. It's a lot of work you've put into it to get to the point where you're at. The question about Conor is, does beating him or losing to him, in your mind, either way, meaningfully change your legacy in the sport?
Well, for sure. I mean, just being honest, Conor's name is going to be one of the great names in combat sports in the, 30 years from now, when I'm talking to my daughter and we're talking about mixed martial arts and she's saying, wow, you fought in the Khabib Conor era. So I know the guy is going down in history, right? As a legend in combat sports, just for the things he's done. Two division world champion, knocking out Jose Aldo the way he did. A lot of things. The list goes on of accomplishments the man's had. So a win over him is huge, right? I go in the history books as well. And I do think I've etched my name in those, but it would be highlighted with that.
It's interesting you're facing him in 2021 because you've been on this sort of road to getting better and better and better, and you're facing better and better opponents and bigger fights. Would you have been ready to fight Conor 2 years ago? I mean, I know he was doing whatever he was doing, but I'm saying if they had offered it to you 2 years ago, would you have been as confident about your chances then as you might be now?
That's tough to say, because whoever I was fighting 2 years ago, I was confident going into those fights. I would say I'm a better fighter now than I was 2 years ago. I'm in a better position mentally. And, I learned so much every camp. Over the last 2 years, I've had a few fights. So I've evolved and learned more about myself and about the balance that I need in these training camps. And that being said, I'm talking about even letting my body rest. When I was a younger fighter, even 2-3 years ago, I thought the more work I put in, the better I would fight. And that's not the case, That's not the case. It's how much you take away from those sessions, how good my body feels. It's not how much you can do, it's the quality of work and my mindset. And I'm still learning. In 2 years I'll be a different fighter. I'm just doing my best to give myself the best chance at being great every time I walk out there. I'm pushing myself every day. I'm trying to do everything that I have control over to do correctly. And I'm living and learning, and that's just it. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I'm doing my best. That's just it. I mean, fighting is so transparent. Over the years I've learned there's no under those lights, there's no peacocking. There's no fluffing up and acting a certain way. It's the truth. The truth will come out. Whatever fighter you are, whatever skill set you have, your preparation, whatever is going to show in that 15 or 25 minutes. And so I'm just doing everything I can to put myself the most prepared and in the right position to perform. That's it, man.
Yeah, what it sounds like to me is just from watching the development of your career all these years, it's that, yes, you've gotten much better as a fighter, certainly and more mature as a man and a father and everything else. But the lesson I take from your career as an observer is that it just, even for the best fighters, which is what you are, it takes a long time to learn the fight game, how to prepare, how to cut weight, how to deal with an opponent who talks trash, how to travel, how to, understand you can only control what you can control, how to program a camp, like all these different pieces. Man, that's a lot of things to understand, and it takes a long time to get it. Do you feel like you finally mastered it?
No, far from it. Far from it. I'm learning. I'm learning today. I'm going to learn tomorrow, and take these lessons, the good and the bad, and move forward. That's all we can do. But I know it's an ongoing process. It never stops.
Just a couple questions.
When it stops, I'm done. Right? Yeah. When it stops, I'm done.
Fair enough. Good point. All right, just a couple questions for you, and I'll let you go here. You'll have only, with this fight being scheduled in 2021, you'll have only fought one time in 2020, and that was a long, brutal fight. You had talked about giving rest to your body. What is your feeling about the sort of relative inactivity there?
I've been fighting for 13 years. That's the longest layoff I've had. To fight one time in a calendar year is crazy. But maybe it was needed. Before that Hooker fight, I was coming off of a pretty serious surgery where I couldn't walk for 2 months. And I think that it sucks to be on the sideline and watch these guys fight and watch things happen. But at the same time, it was a test on the mental side. I think I grew from that. And once things did resume and I was able to get back to training, I was excited to be there again. I wasn't overworked. I was hungry for information and hungry to put time in on the mats. So things happen for a reason. I had an injury for years that I was dealing with in my hip, and we got it fixed.
I don't know. Lastly, I don't know. I cannot recall if your family joined you for the Khabib fight. I don't know what the situation was, but either way, what is your plan for them to watch the Conor fight? Are they going to be there? Are they going to stay at home? What are you thinking?
I think my wife is going to be there. We're still working out all the details with that. Exactly. And going back to living and learning, I went out 8 days ahead of time for the Khabib fight, and that wasn't enough. So I'm going to do at least 2 weeks, and my camp's getting adjusted accordingly to that, because that means I have 2 weeks less of time in Florida. It's just a weird time we're living in, and we're rolling with the punches. But I have a little bit of experience with traveling there, because I just fought there in September last year, so that helps.
So what was the issue with only 8 days versus, let's say, 2 weeks?
Well, hopefully but here's another thing. When I fought Khabib, we fought on their time. I'm not sure if this fight with Conor is going to be angled to air on American, time,
right.
pay-per-view. So those are curveballs. We have to wait and see what happens. But with the Khabib fight, my time was all messed up, man. I wasn't falling asleep, and of course, I don't like to talk about this stuff because it sounds like excuses. I fought the way I would have fought whether if I was rested or not, but I was having trouble sleeping. I wouldn't fall asleep till like 4 a.m. And then being in a main event, and that was before, being in a title unification bout against a superstar like Khabib in that area. My media was I know I had my load was a lot. I had a lot of things to do early in the mornings, and I didn't sleep well. But that's no excuse. I'm not saying that. I'm just letting you know. I learned a lesson with that, and I'm going out earlier.
Fair enough. Well, I won't keep you any longer, Dustin. It's a real pleasure to get to talk to you. I'm thrilled for this opportunity for you. Can't wait to see what happens, win or lose, and we appreciate your time. And I won't say best of luck. I'll just say can't wait to see it.
I appreciate it, man. I can't wait to do it.